Let's step into the stillness of the night, into a time many call the witching hour. Traditionally, this refers to the period between 3 and 4 in the morning, an eerie window when the world seems to hold its breath. The origins of this term stretch back centuries, rooted in folklore and superstition. It was once believed that the veil between worlds grew thin during these early hours, allowing supernatural forces, witches, spirits, and otherworldly beings to cross the boundaries of our reality. But beyond the legends, the witching hour is also a profoundly real phenomenon for those navigating the depths of grief. When the sun sets and the distractions of the day finally fade, a profound quietness settles in. For those mourning a loss, this quiet is not peaceful, it is oppressive. The witching hour becomes a lonely stage where grief casts its longest and darkest shadow. The mind, no longer occupied by the routines of the day, is forced to turn inward. Memories surface with an unwelcome clarity. Emotions, held at bay by the light, intensify. The absence of a loved one becomes a physical presence in the hush of the night. There is a reason that hospitals and care facilities report an increase in loneliness, sadness, and anxiety among patients during these hours. Sleep researchers have found that disruptions to our circadian rhythms, the ancient cycles that govern sleep and wakefulness, can heighten our feelings of vulnerability. After midnight, the body's production of melatonin increases, preparing us for rest. But for the grieving heart, sleep may not come. Instead, the silence amplifies the very thoughts and feelings that were pushed aside during the day. In a 2018 study, researchers noted that bereaved individuals were far more likely to experience insomnia, vivid dreams, and jarring nighttime awakenings.
These experiences often cluster in the early morning, making the witching hour a potent symbol of the intersection between sleeplessness and sorrow. Culturally, this time has long been depicted as a moment of transformation. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, the ghost of a murdered king appears to his son just before the dawn. Gothic novels use the midnight hour to introduce spectral apparitions and moments of profound despair. These creative works mirror a universal truth. The night magnifies the ache of absence. Psychologists suggest that with fewer external stimuli, the mind is left alone with its thoughts. The protective barriers we build during the day, work, conversation, noise, simply fall away. The witching hour becomes not just a time on the clock, but a personal landscape of longing. It is a period when unresolved questions, unspoken regrets, and the desperate hope for one last conversation all bubble to the surface, searching for comfort in the encroaching darkness. And in that darkness, we often long for just one thing: the sound of a familiar voice. Imagine a quiet evening, sometime in the late 19th century. The world is changing at a breathtaking pace. Trains cut across continents, electricity flickers to life in city streets, but communication remains bound by the physical world. A message still requires a letter, a messenger, a face-to-face conversation. Then, amidst this backdrop, comes something that feels like magic. The first call from beyond the confines of a single room. The scene is March 10th, 1876, inside a modest workshop in Boston. Alexander Graham Bell, a Scottish-born inventor, is hunched over a curious contraption of wires, magnets, and diaphragms. In a separate room, just a few feet away, his assistant, Thomas Watson, waits. They have been experimenting for months, chasing the elusive goal of transmitting human speech electrically. The air is thick with anticipation.
Suddenly, Bell spills acid on himself, and in a moment of pure, unscripted urgency, speaks into his device. "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." In the next room, Watson hears it. Bell's voice, clear and unmistakable, transmitted over a simple wire. For the first time in history, human speech has crossed a physical gap without shouting, traveling instead as invisible electrical signals. Watson rushes in, exhilarated. This moment marks the birth of the telephone, an invention that would forever alter the fabric of human connection. But the story of that first call is not just about a single phrase. The journey to that point was filled with trial, error, and relentless dedication. Bell and Watson spent countless hours tinkering, trying to faithfully reproduce the complex vibrations of the human voice. Others had managed to transmit simple sounds or musical notes, but no one had yet captured the full range of speech. Before the telephone, the fastest way to communicate over a distance was the telegraph, which sent messages as coded pulses, dots and dashes in Morse code. It was efficient but impersonal. The telephone promised something far more profound: the richness and nuance of the human voice itself. Emotion, tone, even a moment of hesitation could now travel across miles, making conversations feel immediate and deeply personal. Bell's first call didn't travel far, but it represented a monumental leap. Within months, the distance would be extended across buildings, then cities, and soon continents. The public was astonished, with early demonstrations drawing crowds who marveled at the magic of hearing a voice emerge from a wooden box. The telephone didn't just change how people talked, it changed how they thought about distance and presence. The idea of a voice traveling invisibly along a wire seemed like something from a fantasy. But in creating a bridge for the living, Bell may have inadvertently opened a line for something else.
A line that was never meant to be answered. As the days passed, the situation took a darker turn. At first, the phone calls were merely unsettling, anonymous numbers flashing on the screen, the line going dead with a chilling, empty silence whenever someone answered. But soon, they became relentless, a digital siege at all hours of the day and night. Each ring echoed through the house like a warning bell, splintering the quiet and fraying every nerve. The caller never spoke, but their presence was palpable. Sometimes a faint, raspy breath could be heard on the other end, as if someone or something was simply listening, waiting. The family tried everything. They changed their number, they blocked every unknown contact, they unplugged the landline from the wall. But somehow, the calls persisted. The shrill ring of the disconnected phone would tear through the house, a sound with no logical source. Even cell phones, which had been safe at first, began to receive the same eerie, silent communications. Then, the circle of fear began to widen. Friends and neighbors reported similar disturbances, their own phones now ringing with that same unnerving silence, suggesting that whatever force was at work was expanding its reach. The escalation did not stop at the phone lines. Ominous signs began to manifest around the house. Pets, usually calm, started behaving erratically, dogs barking at empty corners, cats hissing at closed doors, both refusing to enter certain rooms as if sensing an unseen predator. One morning, the family awoke to find every picture on the walls turned upside down, their smiling faces staring at the floor, with no sign of forced entry. Outside, the unnatural occurrences grew harder to ignore. Flocks of crows began to gather on the power lines, their harsh cries filling the air at dawn and dusk. The garden, once vibrant, began to wither, its plants turning black and brittle overnight.
In local folklore, such omens carry deep and terrifying significance. Persistent, silent phone calls were said to be the attempts of a restless spirit to reach the living. The gathering of crows was a harbinger of tragedy. The family, already on edge, began to connect these signs, realizing that what had started as a strange inconvenience had become a full-blown haunting. Attempts to seek help were met with skepticism. The authorities found no evidence of prank calls. Animal control could not explain the sudden change in wildlife. But the calls continued, and the omens multiplied. Each night brought a new disturbance, a shadow flitting across a hallway, a sudden chill that settled deep in the bones, the unshakable sense of being watched. The persistent, unnatural calls had become a countdown, signaling that something far more sinister was about to cross the threshold from their world into ours. Imagine a quiet room, dimly lit. The air feels heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. In stories and legends, from ancient myths to modern ghost tales, This is the moment when the shadows cross the threshold, moving from the realm of the possible into the world of the tangible. But what does it truly mean for something hidden, something intangible, to manifest? How do these mysterious forces make their presence known? Manifestation is the process by which something once invisible becomes real. In the context of the shadows that haunt our fears, it is that heart-stopping moment when the unknown steps out of the periphery and into focus. Throughout history, cultures worldwide have described encounters with shadow people, dark, human-like forms glimpsed from the corner of the eye, only to vanish when confronted directly. In Germanic folklore, the Schattengestalt was a shadowy double, a harbinger of misfortune. In modern times, reports of these figures have surged, often linked to sleep paralysis, a terrifying state when the brain's dreaming and waking worlds overlap.
But the shadow is not always supernatural. In psychology, it refers to the hidden parts of ourselves, the traits and desires we suppress. According to the famed psychiatrist Carl Jung, confronting this personal shadow is essential for growth. In this sense, manifestation occurs when those ignored feelings break through into our conscious awareness, often in dreams, unexpected behaviors, or sudden, dark impulses. The concept of shadows crossing a threshold is a powerful theme in our stories. Think of the moment in Bram Stoker's Dracula when the Count first emerges from the darkness, or the chilling scene in The Haunting of Hill House when the architecture of the house itself seems to breathe. In each case, the tension peaks as the unknown becomes known. The monster steps into the light. But why do shadows manifest at all? Some scientists suggest our brains are wired to see patterns. When faced with ambiguity, especially in low light, the mind fills in the gaps with familiar shapes, often human-like forms. This phenomenon, known as pareidolia, is why we see faces in clouds or figures in the dark. Others argue that stress, fatigue, or emotional turmoil can prime us to perceive things that aren't there, turning our internal anxieties into seemingly external threats. Whether seen through the lens of folklore, psychology, or science, the crossing of the threshold is a powerful turning point. It is the moment when fear can no longer be ignored. For some, it is an encounter with a spirit. For others, it is a confrontation with the darkness inside themselves. Either way, once a shadow has manifested, nothing is ever the same again. When morning finally breaks, the house is eerily silent. The vibrant energy that once filled its halls is gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating stillness. The daughter's room, now empty, feels colder than the rest of the house, as if her absence has leached all the warmth from its walls.
Her bed remains unmade. A book lies open on the pillow. A single shoe sits by the door. Every object is a ghostly reminder of her sudden, inexplicable disappearance. The family is gripped by a paralyzing disbelief. At first, hope is a frantic, flickering thing. They call her name. They search the house. They check the backyard. But with each passing hour, a cold dread begins to set in. Her friends are contacted. None have seen her. The police are notified, and an official investigation begins. Detectives comb through her room for clues, a half-written diary entry, a phone left charging on the nightstand, a computer with a search history that offers no answers. Each detail is scrutinized for a meaning that remains just out of reach. Was this a planned escape, or is something far more sinister at play? The daughter's room, once her sanctuary, becomes a shrine, untouched, preserved, waiting for a return that feels less likely with each passing day. Her absence is no longer just an absence, it is a presence, a chilling void that has settled over the household, a constant reminder of the mystery that haunts them. In the shadows of our hyper-connected world, a new urban legend is taking shape. It isn't whispered around campfires, but shared in hushed tones over encrypted messages and on hidden internet forums. It is the legend of the +1. But this isn't about a social invitation or an extra guest at a wedding. This is something far more sinister. The legend speaks of a connection, a call made from a place of profound grief, a desperate attempt to reach a loved one who is passed on. But it warns that when you open a line to the other side, you can never be sure who or what is listening. The story goes that when a spirit is called back, even for a moment, it doesn't return alone. It brings with it an attachment, a dark echo, a presence that was never meant to cross over. This is the +1. It is the entity that clings to the soul you tried to summon, a parasitic shadow that follows them back into the world of the living. It has no name, no history, no identity of its own. It is a thing of cold, silent observation, and it is drawn to the warmth of life, to the very emotions that fueled the initial call: love, grief, and longing. According to the legend, the signs begin subtly. After the strange phone calls and the fleeting whispers, those who have made contact begin to notice small inconsistencies. A reflection in a dark window that moves a second too late. A second shadow that stretches from their feet, longer and thinner than their own. The feeling of a cold spot in a warm room, or the constant unnerving sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. The +1 doesn't seek to frighten, not at first. It seeks to integrate. It learns by watching, mimicking the behaviors of the living, studying the person who made the call. The true horror of the legend is not in a sudden attack, but in a slow, creeping replacement. The entity begins to influence the world around its new host. Friends might comment that you seem different, distant. Your personality begins to shift in subtle ways. Your memories start to feel borrowed. The +1, this uninvited guest from beyond, is not a ghost that haunts a house. It is a ghost that haunts a life, slowly overriding the original soul until all that remains is a hollow imitation. The person you were is gone, and in their place is a quiet, watchful passenger. The legend serves as a chilling modern parable. Be careful who you call in the dark, because they might just bring someone with them, and that someone may decide to stay.